Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So today we will start a discussion on chapter 12 of Bhagavad-gita, Pure Devotional Service. So this is a short chapter, 20 verses, but very, very potent. Divided into 3 sections. The first 7 verses are Arjun's inquiry and Krishna's assurance about the position of bhakti with respect to karma and gyan, astang. Then the next 5 verses, 8 to 10, are the yoga ladder, which is one of the key understandings that we get from Bhagavad-gita, and that helps us put all of Krishna's teaching in perspective. And then the last section of 8 verses, 13 to 20, are qualities that endear one to Krishna. So we'll start with our discussion on the first verse. Arjun vacha evam satata yukta ye bhakta swam paryupasate ye chapyaksharam avyatam tesham ke yoga vittamaha. Arjun inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in a devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? So this question from Arjun is coming as a result of his witnessing Krishna's universal form. So he saw this magnificent, awe-inspiring, opulent form of Krishna, and he did not feel any attraction to it, the form. In fact, the opposite. He actually felt distaste for the form, fear. So now he's questioning his own relationship with Krishna. So as a devotee, he knows that his relationship with Krishna is that of one who is engaged in devotional service. But then Krishna has also manifested his impersonal Brahman form. So he's inquiring, and to a great extent is looking for assurances. So a quick recap that in the chapters 2 to 6, Krishna gave us the understanding of the self, Atma, by the process of karma, gyan or asta, resultant in Atma Gyan, that we are not the body but the soul. Then in chapters 7 to 11, Krishna gave us an understanding of the source of the Atma, or in other words, he gave us an understanding of himself, Krishna. Who is Krishna? Mostly by Jnana Mishra Bhakti or Yoga Mishra Bhakti. Now in the 12th chapter, Krishna is going to tell which is the best. Is it Atma Gyan or is it Bhakti? Now the knowledge of the self is also interchangeably used with the knowledge of Brahman. So actually in the commentaries of the Acharya Srila Prabhupada, he will wherever Krishna refers to the impersonal Brahman, Krishna will refer to the impersonal Brahman of Prabhupada will refer to the impersonal Brahman of Krishna. Baldev Devotion refers to this as the knowledge of the soul, and there is not much difference. Baldev Devotion himself makes the point that the soul is also made of the same spiritual material as the Brahman. So they are interchangeable. But because we follow Prabhupada's way of explaining things, what we will consider is that Krishna is going to be comparing those who surrender to the impersonal Brahman versus those who follow the path of devotional service. Now, interestingly, Arjun over here does not just ask for which is the better of the two. Right? So he uses the word yoga vittama. So the word means that which is the better of the two, and of the better of the two, which is the best. So what he is asking is that between the followers of the impersonal Brahman and the followers of Bhakti, which is the better, and of one that is better. Now we know that Krishna will say the devotees are better, and so then his implicit question over here is also, what is the best form of Bhakti? And Krishna will also enlighten Arjuna about that. Next verse. Verse 2. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Veshmano Ye Mam Nityayukta Upasate Shadaya Parayo Pete Sa Petas Te Me Yukta Tamamataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on Krishna's personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. So we see that Krishna succinctly answers Arjun's question. So Arjuna had given two options, that those who are attracted to the impersonal Brahman or those who are attracted to the personal form. Right? So Krishna says that those who fix their minds on my personal form. Right? So clearly he is saying that devotees are better. Now Arjuna had also asked that amongst the various kinds of devotees, who are the best? So he says that Nitya Yukta, that those who are constantly engaged in worshipping me with great faith. So amongst all the devotees, the Ananya Bhaktas, so Ananya Bhaktas are the pure devotees, are the best. So inferior to the Ananya Bhaktas are the Mishra Bhaktas. So the Mishra Bhaktas are those in which the bhakti is mixed with either karma or jnana or yoga or with other desires. So bhakti is better than jnana, and amongst all the types of devotees, pure devotees are the best. Okay, next verse. Verses 3 and 4. Yetvaksharam anirdeshyam avyaktam paryupasate sarvatragam achintayam cha kutastham achalam dhruvam sanyemayendriya gramam sarvatra samabuddhayah te prapnuvanti mameva sarvabhuta hite ratah. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me. So Arjuna had asked a two-part question, that of the two, which is better? And Krishna says that those who worship his personal form and devotion are better. Now, for the sake of completeness, Krishna also talks about those who pursue the path of Brahman realization. So here he says that at last they achieve me. So the understanding is that this process is long and tedious. So Krishna describes the Atma. Atma is referred as Aksharam over here, and refers to the Jivatma, and can also, because the composition is the same, also refers to the qualities of the Brahman. So there are 7 qualities of the Atma that are given by Krishna in this verse. Anirdesham means inconceivable, cannot be described by words. Achintyam means cannot be comprehended by the mind, it's not subject to logical analysis. Avyaktam means that cannot be perceived by the senses. Sarvatra Gam means that it is all pervasive, or its effect spreads through the body, senses and the pranas. Then Kutastham means that it is unchanging. Achalam means without movement. So without movement means that because it is fully in knowledge, so it knows, the soul is all knowing, and there is no change in its state. And the seventh Dhruva means fixed, which means that it is eternally fixed in taking shelter of the Paramatma. And now, in addition to the 7 qualities, Krishna gives the process by which the Atma Gyan is attained. So firstly he says completely controlling all of the senses, withdrawing them from the sense objects. Second he says is that seeing the friend, well-wisher and neutral same, Sarvatra Sam Buddhaya, which means that seeing the Brahman situated in all living and non-living entities. Right, so this is essentially the Brahma vision. Third is endeavoring for the auspiciousness of all beings. So this comes from seeing the Paramatma situated everywhere. And fourth is engaging in devotion to Krishna in the form of offering their actions to Krishna. Right? So it's important that for the success of any endeavor, some bhakti is needed. So here bhakti is a minor component, but yet it is needed for the endeavor to succeed. So the journey of such souls is that after attaining realization of their own Atma, of the self, they are also able to use that realization to understand the form of Krishna as the impersonal Brahman. So they attain Krishna in the form of the impersonal Brahman. And when Krishna says that engaged in devotion, then they could either be engaged in some form of devotion to the Brahman, worshipping the Brahman, or in a minor component, devotion to Krishna. So Prabhupada says that in order to perceive the super soul within the individual soul, one has to see sensual activities, seeing, hearing, tasting, working, etc. So this is the connection between the Atma and the Brahman. That by these 4 processes of withdrawing the senses, then Sarvatra Sambuddhaya, of equivision, of being the friend for all, and worshipping Krishna as either Brahman, one is able to perceive the soul, and then one is able to perceive the super soul accompanying the soul, and then one is able to perceive the Brahman. So the process is long and tedious, because these 4 things, controlling the senses, having equivision, desiring welfare for friend or enemy, very, very difficult to do. These are elaborated in the first 6 chapters, but as we read them, Srila Prabhupada would also share they are very difficult to do. So the chances of failure are very high, and the result is that one gets only access to the impersonal form of Krishna. Okay, next verse. Verse 5. Kleshodiktarastesham avyakta saktachetasham avyakta hi gatir dukham devatviravapyate. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. So this is Krishna's verdict. Right? So he spoke about the path to attain his personal form, that of devotion. He spoke of the path to attain his impersonal form, the four things that he had said. And now, comparing the two, he says that those who are attracted to the impersonal, the advancement is very difficult. And why? So he says, he uses the word for those who are embodied. So embodied refers to the conditioned jiva. So when the jiva gets a body, with the body it also gets the mind and the senses, and also desires. So stopping these desires is difficult because the soul is by nature active and full of desires. In the previous verse, Krishna had noted that the way for Brahman realization is Saniyamendriya Gramam, or completely controlling the senses. That was step 1. And in this is the area where almost everybody fails. What to go to the subsequent steps of having samadrishti and looking at everyone, being the benefactor for everyone. Just the very first step of completely controlling the senses is difficult for one that is embodied. Now, one may say that even devotees have to control senses. That is true but different. So devotees do not stop the senses, they divert the senses. And they divert it to the different angas of bhakti. So Prabhupada says that if one wants to ignore this devotional service, there is a danger of turning to atheism. Thus, the process of centering attention on the unmanifested, the inconceivable, which is beyond the approach of the senses, as already expressed in this verse, should never be encouraged at any time, especially in this age. It is not advised by Lord Krishna. Next verse, verses 6 and 7. Yetu sarvani karmani maya sanya samatparaha anyaneva yogena mam dhyayantu pasate teshamam samudrata mrityu samsar sagarat bhavamina chirat partha mayavesita chetasham. But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pratha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So Krishna is constantly contrasting the path of Brahman realization and bhakti. So previous verse was Brahman realization, where he said progress is very difficult. Here he says, I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So this is the rapid reciprocation by Krishna to his devotees. So those who have affinity for karma, they follow the Vedic processes, karma kand. Those who have affinity for jnana, they attempt to control the mind and the senses. Those who have aspiration for asthana, they perform severe austerities. So in all three, there is a tremendous amount of effort. But those who execute in devotional service, Krishna is helping. So when he says, I am the swift deliverer, he is taking the burden of delivery on his own. He is expecting his devotees to have a certain disposition in the relationship to him. But the entire responsibility of delivery Krishna takes upon himself. Whereas in all other paths of karma, jnana and astha, the practitioner has to perfect it in order to attain the desired goal. Prabhupada explains through an analogy that when a man has fallen into the ocean, he must struggle very hard. And even if he is expert in swimming, he cannot save himself. But if somebody else comes and picks up that person, then he is easily rescued. So this material world is called a samsara sagar, like an ocean of material existence. And the jiva is struggling very hard in it, and on its own very difficult. But when Krishna comes, the process is very easily accomplished. So what is Krishna saying over here? That those who are exclusive devotees, Keval Bhaktas, Ananya Bhaktas, then having given up all other processes of karma, jnana, astang for the purpose of attaining Krishna, what do they engage in? Anayena yogena. So they engaged in pure devotional service, devoid of any contamination. And for them Krishna says that I will very quickly deliver them. Okay, next verse. Verse 8. Mayeva mana adatsva may buddhim niveshaya nivashisyasi mayeva ata urdhvam na samshaya. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt. So beginning from this verse, for the next 5 verses, Krishna describes the famous yoga ladder. So in the previous set of verses, he had kind of described 2 categories. Those who worship his impersonal form and those who worship his personal form. And he had clearly stated how one is superior to another. Now he will proceed to further differentiate in the different stages of advancement, both in terms of the stages of bhakti and the stages prior to bhakti. So this particular verse talks about the highest rung on the yoga ladder, which is Ananya Bhakti, which is pure devotional service. So Krishna uses Mai 3 times in this verse to indicate that the worship of such a person is on me, not on the impersonal form. The worship is on me, not on the super soul. And the worship is on me only in the personal form. So to further drive this point, Krishna says, Mai eva. The eva means only. So this excludes any other interpretation of Krishna's form, whether it is impersonal or that of Paramatma. So Krishna is saying that only worship me in my personal form as Sham Sundar, with a flute and a peacock feather, wearing yellow clothes, not as the impersonal Brahman and not as the all-pervasive Paramatma. So this is the highest stage of bhakti. Let's go to the next verse. 12.9. Atha chittam samadhatum na sakshnoshi mahi stiram abhyasa yogena tato mamechhaptum dhananjaya. My dear Arjun, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. So what if one is not able to reach the stage of Ananya Bhakti? And Krishna says that if you are not able to reach the perfect stage of Bhakti, then practice Abhyas Rupa Bhakti. So Abhyas Rupa Bhakti is Sadhana Vaidhi Bhakti. This is what practicing devotees like us follow. Because we do not have a spontaneous attraction to Krishna, we follow the rules and regulations of devotional service. And Krishna says that in this way develop a desire to attain me. He does not say that in this way attain me, because Sadhana Vaidhi Bhakti is a rung to the next ladder of Ananya Bhakti or Shuddha Bhakti. So the followers of Sadhana Vaidhi Bhakti, when they get perfected, they start practicing Ananya Bhakti. Krishna calls Arjun Dhananjaya, the winner of wealth. Now Krishna wants Arjun to win the real wealth of devotion to him. Srila Prabhupada in the purport says that to practice the regulative principles of bhakti, one should take shelter of an expert spiritual master and then follow the instructions. That will automatically, in due course of time, give rise to pure devotional service. Prabhupada says that this will surely bring one to the stage of love of God. Next verse, verse 10. Abhyasepya samarthosi mat karma param bhava madartam api karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. If you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. So this is an even lower rung in Bhakti. So the first rung, 12.8, was Ananya Bhakti. There Krishna had talked about two forms of Ananya Bhakti, Manan and Smaran. So Smaran is remembering Krishna with the mind, and Manan is with intelligence, which is reading the scriptures and focusing on Krishna's qualities and pastimes. So both of them were internal, with the mind and intelligence. Next, Krishna had talked about Abhyasa Bhakti, which is Sadhana Vaidhi Bhakti. Even though it is performed by external rules and regulations, it also involves surrender of mind and intelligence, because one has to have that conviction that this is the way. Now, what if somebody lacks that conviction? So, Krishna is now talking about those persons, saying that if you cannot engage internally with your mind and intelligence in my service, then externally engage in my service, which essentially means working for Krishna. So working for Krishna is doing things like helping build Krishna's temple, watering his flower garden, serving his devotees, by Dravya Seva, giving in charity, by Shram Seva, by doing some menial work. So one is not engaged in performing any angas of bhakti per se, like Shravana, Kirtana, Smaran, but nevertheless, because of certain desires and reasons, the person is still attracted to Krishna, then they may engage in simply working for Krishna. And Krishna says that by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. So these three are all forms of bhakti, because in all three of them, Krishna is giving the same assurance. Now, for Ananya Bhakti, perfection is there. For the sadhakas, one has to work for the perfection. And for those who are performing work for Krishna, eventually they will come to the stage of sadhana, Vaidhi Bhakti, and then they will go to the stage of Ananya Bhakti. Okay, next verse. Verse 11. Adhetad apyasaptosi kartum madyogamashataha sarvakarma faltyagam tataha kuru yatatmavan. If, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act, giving up all results of your work, and try to be self-situated. So, this verse is for those who are unable to develop any attraction for Krishna. So, in the previous three verses, Krishna was present there. Ananya Bhakti, by Manana Smaran, think of Krishna. Vaidhi Bhakti, think of Krishna by following rules and regulations. Then third was work for me. It is still Krishna is there. But here he prefaces saying that if you are unable to work in consciousness of me, so now he is addressing those people who for whatever reason do not develop an attraction to him. He says, then try to act giving up all the results of your work. Now this we are familiar with. This is Nishkama Karma. But Krishna does not give that promise over here that he has been giving in the previous three verses, where he says that you will attain me. Here he makes no such commitment because Krishna himself is not there. So this is actually the lowest rung of the ladder. And in a way, Krishna goes out of sequence because the next verse, it represents a higher stage than this. And the reason is because in the previous verse 12:10, Krishna says, you work for me. And then he wants to continue the theme of work. So that's why he says in 12:10, work for me. And then he says, but if you cannot work for me, then you work without desires. Right? So to continue the theme of work, he speaks. But in terms of advancement, this is the lowest stage. And it's not that at this stage a person will never attain Krishna. Right? So in 1846 it stated that even if one serves Krishna indirectly, without acknowledging him, there is still benefit, because one will gradually come to understand the position of Krishna. How? Because such people are pious. Because of piety, they may attract the mercy of a devotee. By the performance of Agyat Sukriti, they may develop devotional desires. So, eventually, with the mercy of Krishna coming through his devotee, they may attain. That is why Krishna is still putting it as an option over here. Okay, let's go to the next verse. Okay, verse 12. Jnanam abhyasaja jnana dhyanam vishishyate dhyanat karma phala tyagas tyagas shantiranantaram. If you cannot take to this practice, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation. And better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of the action. For by such renunciation, one can attain peace of mind. So the previous verse talked about renunciation of the fruits of action, which was 12:11, and the verse before that talked also about the renunciation of the fruits of action but to Krishna. So the understanding is that this verse refers to 12:10, where it is talking about working for Krishna. Because we know in the progression in Bhagavad-gita, after Sakam Karma comes Nishkam Karma, after Nishkam Karma comes Gyan, after Gyan comes Astang. Right? So if we accept that progression, then here we would have difficulty in reconciling the fact when Krishna says that better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits, different sequence. Right? And in the previous verse we had discussed, why does Krishna put that verse over there? Because he was talking about karma. So earlier he was talking about Nishkam Karma Yoga, which is offering to Krishna, and now he talks about the process of Gyan and Astang Yoga. So let's quickly run through the rungs of the yoga ladder. So here on the screen you will see the 5 stages of the yoga ladder. The top stage, so hidden a little bit, it's 12.8, Shuddha Bhakti, where Krishna talked about Manan or Smaran, that whether thinking of him by mind or intelligence, one exclusively surrenders to Krishna. So this is the highest stage of pure devotional service described in 12.8. 12.9, Abhyas Rupena Bhakti, Sadhana Vaidhi Bhakti, where one performs devotional service under external rules and regulations. 12.10 was when Krishna says that if you cannot do this Vaidhi Bhakti, then work for me. So this is Karma Pradhan Bhakti, Karma Bhuta, or can be called Karma Yoga also, where the desire is still to connect to Krishna, but the inclination is to work. So at this stage the person works and surrenders the results to Krishna. So this is Nishkam Karma but directed towards Krishna. The next stage is 12.12, where Krishna says if you cannot do this, which means that if you cannot do work for me, then he says you follow Astang Yoga or Gyan Yoga, right? Meditation or knowledge. So this is not in the stage of bhakti, but it is getting one to the stage of self-realization. And the lowest stage is 12.11, where Krishna says that you work without attachment to the result. This is Nishkam Karma. Now this itself is a very exalted stage, but in relation to the stages that Krishna has described, this is the lowest stage. So this in effect is the yoga ladder that is described by Krishna. So we will stop at this point and continue the discussion of the other verses in the next session. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.